God will send angels to strengthen you. Hebrews 1:13-14. But to which of the angels said he at any time, Sit on my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool? Are they not all ministering spirits sent forth to minister for them who shall be heirs of salvation? The Greek word for angel is angelos, and it means messenger. So angels are God's messengers, sent to minister to us and for us who are heirs of salvation. If you are a believer, God has assigned His angels to watch over you. Angels are real, and angels are scriptural. And the topic of angels is something we as Christians should not avoid. Yes, indeed, there are Christian denominations that have somewhat tainted topics surrounding the supernatural. This has had a negative effect because some Christian believers avoid the topic of the supernatural entirely. However, we should not avoid the supernatural. We serve a God that is supernatural, and the God who we serve tells us that angels are real and they play a very active role in the life of believers. Foundationally, you need to understand that you are never alone. We see in the Bible instances where our Lord sends His angels to strengthen His people at crucial moments in their lives. We can find this angelic support in different passages of the Bible. In the Old and the New Testaments, there are several references to divine support from angels. Joshua 5:13-15 says, And it came to pass, when Joshua was by Jericho, that he lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, a man stood opposite him with his sword drawn in his hand, and Joshua went to him and said to him, Are you for us or for our adversaries? So he said, No, but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and worshipped, and said to him, What does my Lord say to his servant? Then the commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, Take your sandal off your foot, for the place where you stand is holy. And Joshua did so. An angel of God strengthened the Israelites against their enemies in the Old Testament. No wonder the Israelites never lost a battle, except when they had sinned against God. What the angel of the Lord's army did for the Israelites is symbolic of what God will use angels to accomplish in the lives of the New Testament believers. Angels are meant to complement us in achieving God's purpose for our lives. They encourage and strengthen us when we are weak. Exodus 14:14, The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. God has a vast number of resources at His disposal that He can use to deliver you out of your situation today. God has resources that you and I know nothing about. And one of those resources He has are an innumerable number of angels. God is your Father, and He is a Father who is actively interested in your life. Get this idea that God doesn't care about you and your well-being out of your head. Get this idea that you are a second-class citizen in the eyes of God out of your head. God actively cares about you. He is interested in your life. The Lord shall fight for you. God is with you in the battle. Don't give up. It's interesting to know that God sent an angel to strengthen and prepare Jesus Christ for His death. Luke 22:40-44. And when He was at the place, He said unto them, Pray that ye enter not into temptation. And He was withdrawn from them about a stone's cast, and kneeled down and prayed, saying, Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. And there appeared an angel unto him from heaven, strengthening him. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was as it were great drops of blood falling down to the ground. In response to Jesus' prayer, The Father did not take the cup from Jesus, but he strengthened Jesus by angelic messengers to be able to take and drink the cup. While Christ was not delivered from his sufferings, he was strengthened and supported under them. We are always given the grace sufficient to meet every difficulty God allows us to face. This is something we need to know. And remember, it is not that God will remove us from the situation. In some situations, God does indeed remove us from the situation and deliver us in a marvelous way. However, sometimes God won't take you out from the situation. And that is the reality. Sometimes you have to go through the fire. Sometimes you have to go through the water. But when God does allow you to go through the situation, he will strengthen you so that you can overcome the situation. I wonder how many of you have been strengthened by angels without knowing it. I wonder how many of you have been ministered to by angels without knowing. Whether you are aware of it or not, angels were present whenever you sat by a loved one's bedside as they approached heaven's gates. Perhaps one of your loved ones mentioned in their final words that they had seen angels or lights before entering God's presence. Perhaps you simply understood and took solace in the fact that they were able to gain peace and strength by peering into a realm that is beyond our ability to fully comprehend. God sends angels to strengthen his believers during difficult times. Paul gave an account of how an angel strengthened his faith while he was on the voyage to Caesar. Acts 27:22-24 says, "And now I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall be no loss of any man's life among you, but of the ship. For there stood by me this night the angel of God, whose I am and whom I serve, saying, Fear not, Paul, thou must be brought before Caesar, and lo, God hath given thee all them that sail with thee." In this passage, Paul and everyone on board was threatened by the storm that beat hard against their ship, but an angel appeared to Paul and strengthened him. Adversity comes in a variety of forms. These confusing predicaments interrupt our lives at the most inconvenient times, and the frustrating thing is that adversity does not require an invitation. Adversity and calamity doesn't care whether you're rich or poor, tall or short, green or red, married or single. It just comes uninvited. And we find ourselves caught in the middle of the storm. One moment life seems to be serene, then we wake up and there is a storm. The good news of the gospel is that you can find an anchor in the midst of adversity if you are a child of God. God will provide you with strength and support during the storms of your life. Paul was not only strengthened, but he also encouraged the 276 souls on board with him. Like Paul, the storms may be beating hard against your life, but God will send his angels to strengthen you. The people around you may have given up on you and your situation. You may appear to be alone, but remember this: God will not leave you nor forsake you. God does not want you to run your life on your ability alone. This is why he provides us with help from his angels. Another grand story is recorded in Acts 5:18-20, which says, "And laid their hands on the apostles, and put them in the common prison. But the angel of the Lord by night opened the prison doors, and brought them forth, and said, Go, stand and speak in the temple to the people all the words of this life." The apostles were arrested and imprisoned, but an angel opened the prison doors for them, and instructed them to return to the temple where they were arrested, and continue to preach the gospel. The angelic visitation strengthened the faith of the apostles. All of these examples reveal to us that God is ever present with us. When Jesus gave us the Great Commission in Matthew 28:19-20, he promised to be with us forever. He keeps His promises over our lives. The psalmist says that God will give His angels charge over us to keep us from dashing our foot against a stone. Psalms 91:11 and 12. We must note that angels are not to be worshipped or prayed to. Worshipping angels specifically goes against the first commandment of God. It is only God who deserves our praise. We read in Genesis 20:3, "You shall have no other gods before me." The issue with idolizing angels is that people mistakenly believe that if they can win the favor of angels, they can win the favor of God. No living saint, priest, or angel is required for us to pray to God. Our high priest and mediator is Jesus Christ. An angel of God doesn't accept worship. We read in Revelation 22:8 and 9, "And I, John, saw these things and heard them. And when I had heard and seen, I fell down to worship before the feet of the angel which showed me these things. And then he said to me, See you do it not, for I am your fellow servant, and of your brothers and the prophets, and of them which keep the sayings of this book. Worship God." Angels are agents of ministry. They are God's servants and are obedient to His orders. Only God, who is supreme over all things and the creator of all things, is worthy of our worship. Even today, there are people in our world who have had interactions with angels. Maybe some people know about these angelic gatherings. Others may not be aware that they have interacted with angels while walking with or possibly even speaking to them. Hebrews 13:2. "Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares."